Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. This week my guest is funny man Tam Ryan. We talk about his love of a slosh scene, homeschooling, and the ability to make people laugh. Also, I need to let you in on a little secret. Before we actually did the interview, I spent a lot of time chatting away with Tam, and I forgot the name of a very, very famous London building. See if you can spot his callback reference to it later on. So please, sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. My guest for today's Panto podcast is comedian, singer. Anything else you'd like me to add to the list?
Mate, I've been called many things. Just, yes, jack of all, master of none, perhaps.
Mr. Tam Ryan, hello, sir.
How are you?
I'm great. The name Tam Ryan, then?
Yes.
So, where did that come from?
My parents. Traditional like that in the family. No, look, I've got a Welsh name. It's shortened for Tamlin. I was christened. Bizarrely, after the place I was conceived, which is in mid Wales somewhere. There's a little town called Tamlin. It sounds like a really clumsy setup for a joke, this, but it's based in truth. And I was conceived in Tamlin. They must have thought, wow, well, I was effectively 7 miles away from being called Merthyr Tydfil. So, let's celebrate it.
So, was it a funny family growing up?
Not normal, certainly not normal. My parents were, they're both passed now, sadly, but my parents were in show business. And yeah, I was taken around in a carry cot to various light entertainment venues, aboard cruise ships, on tours in Filey, and where all over the shop. So yeah, they were. It was literally the travelling circus. Yeah, so I had it all around me in my upbringing, and weirdly, it never really gave me the bug to go into the industry until a lot later on. But yeah, I come from that sort of background. So.
And how was that sort of transition? When did you realise that you wanted to get into the business?
Quite by accident. I was all set on an academic career. I had a fairly it's going to make me sound really middle class, I don't mean it, but I had a fairly good education. I went to university. I was all set on being a journalist, which quite frankly now I'm very pleased that I rerouted away from that. But no, something happened. There was an incident in my second year of study. Sadly, my mum had fallen ill. My dad had then turned away from comedy, and as he was a sort of song and dance man effectively, and he used to gag as well, and he'd taken to kids entertainment, which we were just talking about before we started this, and they had a tour down the East Coast. There was Bridlington, Filey, all of those, Scarborough, all of those places, and the guy who was his stooge pulled out last minute. Contracts needed to be fulfilled. And here was I at Sheffield Hallam Uni, trying to be a serious journalist for the broadsheets. And he said, "Look, mate, do you mind coming along and being, the Barry Chuckle? I need my stooge. And literally, it was with sincere reluctance that I did that. And that was how I spent my summer. When other people went off and worked in bars, I was getting custard pies in the face and kicked up the jacksie and in a ridiculous outfit. But I got the bug from there, and it surprised me. And I walked out on a uni course and went into the crazy world of entertainment.
What was your first solo gig then?
I was at, and it's funny you ask, because I revisited the place very recently in Mablethorpe, or as I thought it was sold to me, Mablathorpe. I thought I was going to a Greek island. Turned out east coast of Lincolnshire. And it was at the Dunes Theatre. And it was the next season after that. I sort of fudged my way through that, helping my old man out in the King Lollipop show, as it was called. And the next year, an agent came to see that. David Lee cast me in a summer pantomime at Bridlington Spa Theatre. I was so green. It was, it was embarrassing. I've got the tape somewhere, which will never be revisited, really, or shouldn't be. And then an agent came to that and said, "Look, we're looking for a compere at the Dunes Theatre in Mablethorpe for a summer season." It was an old school sort of seaside summer show, and I did that with a keyboard vocalist called Dean Wilding, and we shared responsibilities, and it yeah, it was a great summer. Really enjoyed it. And again, it sort of developed my love and bug for entertaining.
The singing voice, then.
The singing voice, yes.
When did you first realise that you could warble?
Well, I was a bit of a warbler, private warbler in my bedroom for, in my formative years, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, it was part of that contract in many ways. They said, can you do some kind of cabaret on one of the nights? And I said, well, I can give it a go. And I did it. And it there's no great background story. It just came from there, really. But my mum and dad were both singers. So I suppose there's a degree of genetics there. And yeah, but there we go. And now I've ended up married to a vocal coach, of all things. So yeah, my wife teaches it.
Does she ever try and point you in directions?
All the time. Do
you listen, though?
Of course I don't. Of course I don't. No, of course I do, actually. When you get into bad habits, same as anything, don't you? And when I got Elf last year, which is vocally, it's a heavy song, a heavy gig, and there's a huge range of numbers in it, and she absolutely was gold dust for me. In sort of, and you're always learning, aren't you? And to belt out those big numbers in Elf, I was heavily reliant on my missus. Good on you, Lou.
How do you look after the voice then?
Well, I mean, it's just, I suppose it's being sensible. I've been less sensible over recent years, certainly since lockdown. Goodness me, hello Jacobs Creek. So yeah, it's the same as anything, really. I mean, you do warm-ups, you do vocal exercises. I mean, you can probably hear now, because I've actually been working quite a lot, which is a bizarre reality, that my voice is a little bit tired. But rest, recuperation, sensible lifestyle choices, none of which I talk about but don't do, is the way to go. There you go, kids.
That first panto, then. Do you remember what your role was?
Yeah, I played Captain Codbutter, as I recall, in Dick Whittington. I was very shouty, and looking back, pretty hideous. I mean, I'm not saying it to be humble. I was so green, I didn't know. But it was such a beautiful thing to be in, because my old man was in it. So now that he passed in 2016, and he kind of gave me so much guidance along the way, that I look back with real fondness that my actual first stage performance, per se, in a panto was with him playing Dame. So, and I learned so much from him. So yeah, but yeah, if you evaluate my performance, dear God, let's not.
Has Dad been in many pantomimes then?
Loads, yeah. He was Colin Robbins. He went out as he's he kind of made the sort of traditional Dame his thing. So yeah, he'd done a lot for over the years, up and down. But yeah, he was very, very well respected in the industry. Well, through the 80s, through the 90s. I remember him doing Barnsley Civic with Keith Harris and meeting Keith and Orville, and the Danny LaRue show. I remember he was working with Danny for a while in Blackpool. So yeah, he had a long, kind of unvaried and successful career, and it taught me a lot.
So that first time that you became lead comic,
scary.
When was that?
It's a good question, It's a really good question. I'm having to rack my brain, because I worked for Dougie in Bolton, but that was I was playing a sort of principal boy character, and it will have been for Extravaganza Productions, or was it UK? No, it's UK Productions. Sorry, Martin. It was UK Productions at Malvern, where I was playing comic, and yeah, I remember being slightly surprised by the casting. I think I kind of sold myself and said, look, I've kind of learnt the ropes now. I'm starting to fall in love with comedy a bit. I was making people laugh on stage, doing bits and bobs and holiday parks and clubs, and I thought, and I was watching people. I watched the guy Andy Fleming in the first show, and I was watching Paul Crone, who was cast from Granada Reports in Bolton. I thought, do you know what? This is where my future is. And I had a lovely time. I had a great time in Malvern Festival Theatre there. Lovely part of the world. Really enjoyed the production there. And with Ruth Maddox, she was fairy in there. And, you know, it kind of blossomed from there. That was the first one.
That song sheet's the first time. Were you involved with it?
Yes. So memorable that I can't remember what it was. I remember doing it, but, you know, that out of all the panto elements, I think, and if any comic tells you different, they're lying. That is the bit that everybody loves, because it's just you. It's in your hands. And, I mean, I know this is not groundbreaking information. Everyone's, yeah, of course it is. But, yeah, that's your moment. That's your 5 minutes, as if it's ever been only 5 minutes. That's your 8 to 16 minutes to 25 minutes, to, depending if the laugh keeps going, to 34 minutes, to the whole of the second half, to can we go home and get a bus now? That's your moment. That's your golden time. And, you know, that's it. Because the show's done. I mean, it's a perfect spot. It's a perfect gig. The audience are as warm as they can be. They have been absolutely worked through drama, pathos, comedy. And now you're given carte blanche as a comic to go on and just basically just dance on that atmosphere. That's how I view it. It's a beautiful thing, the song sheet.
You said then it can go from 5 minutes to whenever.
Oh, yeah.
What are your favourite song sheet moments?
Right. Manchester Opera House, Peter Pan, 2011, I'm going to say. David Hasselhoff as Captain Hook. I was playing Smee. Loved working with him. Mad as a bag of fruitcakes. But it was the year of the release of a famous song called Gangnam Style. And I was chatting to the director, and I said, look, what I'd like to do is learn this in Korean and really perform it, you know, quite almost as a serious parody. You know, I'm not going to send it up because it'll send itself up, but I've got to do it justice. So I remember sitting in the rehearsal room with headphones while everyone's working out script and going through pathos routines, going, Naji no tasaro no injingaji noja, koki hajanin yaya kananen pokyo ina naja. And doing all of this in a corner with a headset on. I thought, oh my God, this better work, mate. Did you imagine if this doesn't work? So, but Will Brenton, who I've remained in touch with, who was directing, said, no, this will be memorable, because it's, you know, it's different. I don't think anyone else will be doing a song sheet this year in Korean. I said, are you sure, mate? You're out on a limb. But honestly, that just for the novelty factor, I came on and I danced in the background, and then the kids were all doing the dance, and the song sheet dropped. I you know, First Family were great to me at this point, and and they said, you know, do you want a song sheet? I said, yeah, but I want it written in Korean for the gag. And then so they dropped that in, and then but it was just a real magic. You know, you feel this is so work. This is really from the nucleus of the idea to the execution of it. It kind of just, you know, the audience just so went with it, and consequently, I'm still doing that routine. Can you believe that? From 10 years on, I'm still performing Gangnam Style with utter conviction in Korean on stages, up and down.
What about the children then? Have they ever made you look a bit of a fool?
Constantly.
Good.
Yeah. Hey,
that's the point.
That's the whole point. Now, listen, I always think that the best way, I mean, my approach with the song sheet is the best way to, you're never going to top a kid, right? So don't try. Why would you want to anyway? You know, let the kid get the laugh and coax it out of them. Just coax them. If you get the right age kid, I always think 6, and I'm quite, you know, quite strict with it when I'm talking to the ASMs and the stage manager. I'm saying, look, can you please get in the ear of the ushers here? This is really important. Don't get me. I mean, unless I want to do a gag, don't get me the 13-year-old socially inept, teenage. Don't get him or her. Get the 6-year-old, get the 7-year-old who have been unaffected by the cynical world, who would just find, who will just say what comes naturally to a kid's mind, because that is gold, and you can work with that as a comic. So that's the thing, yeah. And kids, my goodness, throughout the years, yeah. Stockport, I remember, was Stockport. I don't know what happened. I don't know what they feed the kids on in Stockport. But generally, maybe it's because I did a 3-year run there. But the Stockport stuff, it stays with me. Yeah, just some. I mean, I've had a kid. I'm sure we all have had a kid sort of wee himself on stage through, and then kind of just cocked his head and looked at me and said, with eyes that said, "Don't tell him, mate." And I said, "Well, I won't tell him, but there is a rake on this stage, and there is an orchestra, and that bloke there on the drums is looking very nervous as this stream of yellow urine is approaching his cymbal." So, but obviously you don't say. So yeah, we've had weirds, we've had someone. I think I've had someone who was sick.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, missed the costume, but yeah, I've had a projectile vomiter, I've had a weir, and they come out with all sorts of magical nonsense, don't they, kids? So, brilliant. Yeah.
You mentioned there was a bit of a fallout, first family.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say fallout. I mean, there wasn't a fallout. And look, I will. Before I say what I have to say, I've got to. First family gave me a huge launch pad, and I'm forever grateful for that. I'm still very much in touch with brilliant people like Eric Potts, with Laura, with the two Lauras who work there. There was loads of great people there, and I did feel part of that family, which I think is why it hurt a little bit more when, Kevin Wood, who I had great respect for, and still do in many ways, but I just never really thought he got what I did in Manchester, but kind of everyone else did, and I didn't understand why I was getting rebooked. I did 5 consecutive years there. Things were going great. I was building a reputation, I think, for me and for them, and I just didn't understand why there was a lot of resistance to what I was doing, and I was getting phone calls and I was getting called in and saying, "You're doing this wrong. I want you to do it more like this. It's not about." And I'm saying, "I'm not that character, Kevin. I'm not Mr. Ego." I said, "I'll do my 7-minute spot, and I'll know if I can connect with this Manchester audience, because I know what a Manchester audience loves. I'm a northerner myself. I know what makes them laugh. I know how to do this." And I think he was just trying to push me down another route of the sort of comic that I'm not. And I thought, well, it's working. Ticket sales are going, and and that was the foundation of our real, I suppose. It's not. I hesitate to say fallout. It wasn't a fallout, but I just felt a little bit unappreciated, I suppose. And it's a bit of a snowflake thing to say, and I don't mean it because of that. But I wasn't on a fortune. I wasn't asking for a fortune. But I loved working at the Opera House in Manchester. I loved it. It was my second home. I felt great there. And I think, they liked me. And I still get messages saying, when are you coming back to Manchester? And I said, I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. So if you're listening, Jonathan and Michael, one day. But yeah, and then I remember just Kevin phoned me up out of the blue and said, "We've got Torval and Dean this year. And this was the conversation. Your money's going down. You're not having a song sheet, and you need to do it this way." And I went, "Wow, okay. Well, that's a nice way to put things." And I said, "I'm sorry, mate. I can't work." And it's not because of anything you said. It's just how you've said it. I'm not prepared to work for anyone where I don't feel valued. And he kind of agreed. He said, "Yeah, fair enough. We'll get someone else." That's where it ended. But after 5 years there, of what I thought was, things were going great, I never got to the bottom of why that was the way it ended. Consequently, you know, first family are no more, which is sad on many levels. But, you know, a deep part of me suggests if you treat people, and it, you know, it's not just me here. But if look, I'll be careful not to speak out of turn. But if you treat people as you find, is what I say. Be kind on the way up and the way down, and you'll get the best out of people.
Has anybody ever taken you under their wing to give you guidance?
Apart
from Dad, of course.
Yeah, many people over the time. I mean, look, I owe a lot to Eric Potts. I mean, when I first sort of made the leap up to, I suppose you'd regard the bigger productions. You know, he was a real sort of inspiration to me, really, because and he said, this is how it works here. It needs to be magnified, and I've got so much respect for him because he is a real. You know, he's just great at what he does, and that is pretty much everything with Panto. He's a great writer, he's a great director, and he's a great performer. And, you know, if you can tick all those three boxes, you ain't doing a lot wrong. So I loved working with Eric. I had great stage chemistry with him. And yeah, he I think perhaps more than anyone else in the actual industry, I suppose, has been the biggest help to me.
How's your lockdown been?
Well, look, I won't lie to you, Hayden. It's been I've enjoyed a lot of it. I think, you know, I've got two kids. I've got 6 and a 9-year-old, and it made us both kind of realise that we lived a bit too much of a fast lifestyle. And by that, I don't mean drinking too much or smoking in 2:30 and playing poker. Well, there has been elements of that. I mean the fact that we turned into sort of mum and dad taxi, and it's like, oh, it's guitar lesson here, it's dancing there, it's drop off here, and when we've got an hour for tea here, and, you know, the same as everyone. It's just taught us all that actually their childhood's going a bit. I'm away a lot of the time on contract, so the time that I am at home, these are precious moments. It's kind of, you're getting lost in the busyness of general life. So it's made me and Louise step back from it and do a lot more family time. We had so much fun. We did have fun. There were moments of frustration and irritation when you think, I need to leave this house now. And I was making, you know, excuses. I was opening cupboards going, sorry, love, we're out of coriander. I'll see you on Thursday. You know, ridiculous. Just get out. And she feels the same. So there's no sexist here, you know, sexism here. But, you know, generally speaking, it's been tough with no work. Of course it has. That's been the same for everyone. Our industry has suffered so badly, and it's caused a lot of destruction and devastation. I know, obviously, the main thing is a huge loss of life and the way it's affected families on that level, but we've also got to think of the future of our industry. And, you know, it is worrying times. It's worrying times, isn't it, as we were saying. So, you know, let's just hope that, you know, the situation will be managed correctly, and then hopefully we can bounce back and get back to what we once were.
Your children,
yeah,
do they have to put up with Dad when it comes to trying routines and things like that?
Well, they're very different personalities. Now, Eloise, who's our 9-year-old, is very academic. So, well, I say very academic. She's more introverted. Barney, however, if he doesn't go into performing, I will be absolutely staggered. And it's not pushy dad or mum syndrome, this. It's just I think he's got a real flair for making people laugh. He's known as the class joker already. He's 6. You know, he does stupid things which get him put on the fence at school, which I don't encourage, but it's hard to tell off. He's just hard to tell off because he's just makes you laugh. You know, naturally, he's got a real natural gift for it. So yeah, to answer your question, he's always sticking his hand up. He's very, you know, I'll do it, Dad. I want to go on stage with you. I want to be the guy. I want to do that. Eloise, sit back, take notes. Write it up.
Are they critical though of Dad?
Hugely, yeah. Eloise more so. She's like, I mean, I felt sorry for her last year. I was, you know, I was dressed as an elf for Christmas. Quite frankly, you know, I was putting tights on, and you know, I look at a lot of her dads who are into, you know, banking or accounting, or one's an orthodontist and, you know, an engineer, and you know, when they all having their discussions at break time at school, what does your dad do? He's an elf. Yeah, he's putting his... Yeah, he goes around in stripy tights for most of December, yeah, and talks in this faux American accent. And, yeah, that's what he does. So bless her, man. I mean, you know, it's not easy, is it? It's not easy being a kid of someone who does this nonsense for a living.
Do you try the routines at home though?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do. They're good because you get honesty as well from my kids. You'll get honesty. You get honesty from all kids, but yeah, they're ideal too. So for me, somewhat deflating at times, you know, because you think I'll try this one out. This would be a corker, and you just see two kids looking stony faced. Yeah, and then they look back to the telly and put YouTube on. So yeah, that's demoralising. But no, they're a good testing ground, aren't they?
It must help though having young children as well when it comes to research ready for that song sheet.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I mean, you know, they'll keep you on your toes of what's in vogue and what's out of vogue. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot to be said for traditional song sheets, but I think we should be past, you know, Gilly Gilly Oss and Pfeffer and Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And, you know, I mean, and no disrespect to productions who are keeping their foot in tradition, and we know Panto's about tradition, but it's also, if we want to keep the medium alive and thriving and moving forward, it's also about tuning into what kids are getting now. What's the biggest song of the year? What's the biggest TV show? And again, you know, anyone worth their salt in the industry knows this already, but I think it's important to keep it fresh, let's say.
What were you going to have as your song sheet for this year?
Not a clue. Honestly.
Oh, so you don't have...
I switched it off, mate, because the more I got I was thrilled this year to get the Winter Gardens. Elf was taking a sabbatical. I've done Elf for the last 2 years around the arenas, which was amazing. I know it's slightly different from Panto, but in many ways it overlapped. I knew it was having a year off this year for various reasons. I got cast as Buttons, which is my favourite part to play, in the Winter Gardens at Blackpool, which is one of my favourite buildings in the world. It's in my hometown. I literally live 7 miles away. So, yeah, I got the email, and we were talking about song sheet choices. And I always think something comes to you in late summer. Honestly, that's kind of how it is. I don't try and do anything before that, because then if something big happens, you know, you've already gone off in a different direction. So, but when the email came through in May, June, man, it was gutting, and it was an understandable postponement. But I literally, having sort of proofread the script, I thought, no, put it away. Don't dwell on it, you know. There's no point. There is no point. It's not coming back. It's done. We'll get it out the cupboard in 2021. So I haven't got an answer for you. Sorry, Hayden. That's really slack of me, isn't it? I don't know is my answer.
You're going to have so much time, though, to be able to concentrate on this script. Do they take much input from you?
Yeah, I mean, every company's different, aren't they? I think the best companies are the ones that give the comic license to be the comic. You know, if you're chained to a gag or a routine that you think, yeah, it's not really what... I mean, look, there's give and take on either side, isn't there? But yeah, I think if you're given just a bit of license and a bit of a breadth to make it your own, then everyone wins. You know, you can get carried away with that, and I've seen that happen in productions, and sometimes you need to be reined in. Absolutely you do. But yeah, I think the best things, if you have a good creative chat, if you're on those terms with your director and producer, everyone gets the best.
Is there anything you don't like doing in pantomime?
No, nothing that springs to mind, to be honest. Sorry, there is choreography. Yeah, I mean, you'll often see me sort of bribing choreographers early doors, getting in their ear, because I know what I want to do with the moves, and I know that, but the legs are very resistant to it. The legs have their own idea, and will do their own thing. So as much as they have to be very patient with me, yeah. So, and I'd be very surprised unless there's comics out there with classical dance training. If this is a surprise to anyone, we are not very good at dancing. The luck is we can hide behind the facade of the comedy clown and look. Oh, look at him! Look at him getting this. Look at him getting this dance routine wrong on purpose and being true to his character. Yeah, all right. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying desperately hard to do this. Yeah.
What about a slosh scene?
Slosh? Yeah, I love a bit of slosh. I mean, the day's gone now, with what's happened this year. But yeah, I think slosh needs to be done absolutely it needs to be timed perfectly for it to work. I've seen and been involved in a few slosh scenes which haven't worked, and it's because they've been under rehearsed and they've been imprecise. And I think precision, although it looks like everything is so chaotic and so random, that's the illusion we're creating for the audience. It's got to be about precision and timing, and you've got to know exactly what you're doing at every given moment, but make it look like it's happening totally naturally. And I think that's how you get the best out of any slosh scene. But yeah, God, what's not to love about that? It's old school. There's nothing. Throwing a bucket of slosh over someone's head is going to be funny in 400 years' time from now, right? When people are looking up this relic of this podcast, they'll be going, "Oh yeah, they were doing that back in those days, were they?" Yeah, I know, we're still doing that. Yeah, we're still doing a bucket thing.
Did you go and see many pantos? I know your dad was in them.
Yeah,
but did you go and see any other pantos as well?
Yeah, well, as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of tradition in our house. I mean, usually I was dragged along, as you say, to the dragged along. That sounds awful, but you can
only see something so many times, though, can't you?
Well, this is it. It's like, oh yeah, we're seeing you again for the 8th time, are we, old man? Yeah, putting a frock on. You see, it's full circle, isn't it? Because I was saying earlier, Eloise, you say my dad's putting tights on. I had that problem. My mum was principal boy. My dad was a dame, so they were effectively the original cross-dressers in Yorkshire for a kid who's finding his way in life and in school. That's a difficult situation. But yeah, I remember being taken to Doncaster Civic, to Barnsley Civic. He didn't just do South Yorkshire venues, but up and down the country. Goodness me, he did loads of stuff. So I saw loads of panto, sometimes from the wings, which is a totally different experience, and sometimes from the stalls. So, yeah.
Could you ever see yourself in years to come, young man still? Could
Yes.
you ever see yourself though becoming dame?
Do you know, it's a weird you ask. I worked with Mike Doyle in Cardiff a couple of years ago, and he was constantly teasing me because he made the transition, as a lot of comics do. There comes a time, and he said, "You'll be on your dame, won't you? You'll be on your dame in a couple of years, won't you?" And so it's a terrible Welsh accent there. Sorry, Welshies. But I remember him say, almost with a wink in his eye, going, "Yeah, you're on the dame. You got 4 years left of this, pal. And you're a dame. You're coming to the dame school with me." So who knows? I can't see it yet, but maybe that's me being unrealistic and clinging to to eternal youth. But listen, Bradley Walsh, who I learnt a lot from as well. You talk about who did I learn a lot from earlier. I've got to put Walshy in there. Sensational. And I was just about to say, last time I saw him, he was still playing. And no disrespect to your age, Brad. He was still buttons in and wishy washy in. But yeah, I've got to tell you that very quickly now. Brought his name up. I was booked. Bradley was really busy, and my way into First Family, and I was working for Extravaganza Productions in Stockport at the time, and I was like, you think I'd like to go up a notch here, and my way in really, via Eric, saying, well, Bradley's booked for Woking, but he's also got TV commitments. He was doing Law and Order. He was, just going down that acting route at the time when he was really nailing it. And he said there's maybe between 8 and 12 shows he couldn't do. So, how do you feel, Tam, about going on for Bradley Walsh? And I went, oh, well, that's a tough gig, but I saw it as a chance to learn as much as anything else. Quite honestly with you, Hayden. I thought, I've seen him in Panto before, and he's a master. He's one of the people who does it better than anyone else. And I was in such a privileged position because I was watching the show every night and watching him perform. And I'm not going to say something clicked in me, but I took my performance to the next level. And that's not by no means that I was imitating what Bradley was doing, because then you just end up with a lukewarm version of someone else's character and characterizations. It's just that he was top of his game in terms of his timing, his characteristics, his facials. He was just gold, pure gold. And I used to watch him every night, every single night, and mentally taking notes. Not actually, because I looked like a weirdo, because I'm on my own as a man in his late 20s, early 30s, making notes. So I didn't want to be that guy. But yeah, and I went on I went on about 9 times for him, matinees, while he was filming. And the first 2 shows, my goodness, I was ready to jack it all in, because it was deeply. I'd come off Stockport, right? You've got to bear this in mind from my point of view. I'd come off Stockport and I'd done my 3rd year there. I was getting on really well, where the audience really took to me. In my head, I've nailed this Panto comic. I've got this now. I am in this field. Go on for Bradley. Bradley had this entrance where he'd come on behind a newspaper, drop the newspaper, and get a spontaneous round of applause. I'm thinking, I can't do that, because he's not in the show. And the worst thing is, there's the pre-curtain announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we regret to inform you that Bradley Walsh will not be playing the role of Wishy Washy in today's performance at the Woking Festival Theatre. And you just heard, while I'm backstage pacing, you heard this audible groan, which is still one of the worst sounds I've ever heard. You heard that, and I thought, okay, I'll cope with that. Then there was a worse sound. We can tell you the role of Wishy Washy will be played by Tam Ryan. And then this sound. Huh? Which is worse than the but you put the together, and that is heartbreaking. So I remember, man, I went on there, and I was it took me 2 shows to find my feet. Eric was in that show. He was Dame. And that's where he helped me a lot. And he took me under his wing and he said, Tam, you did great. I know I didn't. I know he was lying. He said, and effectively he just sort of coaxed me into finding my own character by obviously remaining true to what Bradley was doing, because people were reliant on cue lines. So I can't go in and just be Tam Ryan's wishy-washy. It's got to be his, but it's not got to impersonate him, because that doesn't win. So it was finding that balance and middle ground, and by the 3rd show, I really got the reaction I was looking for. And Eric said, "See," and I remember him saying it now. I remember him saying we were in a drinking establishment one night in Woking, and he went, "See, nailed it." And it felt really good to me, because I felt that was something that I'd crossed a line there. I'd broken through a little bit, and then I was more receptive to learning from watching Brad when he came back. So, good on you, Walsh and Potts. Great combination.
Do you get the Panto blues?
Afterwards, every time. Doesn't go away. Perhaps it sounds pathetic to normal people, you know what I mean? Like we're all weirdos. Well, we are a bit. But I take it, but yeah, you do, because it's a drug, isn't it? That's my drug. That's my currency. Laughter, trading in magic. So I remember being close to tears sometimes as a grown man. I remember being part of the curtain call and it was quite a prophetic song, because it was Take That, Never Forget Where You're Coming From. It sounds really crap, but you put yourself into those lyrics and you think, yeah, someday this will all be someone else's dream. And I remember singing that, thinking, you're right, this is going to go soon. On the last night, this was Manchester Opera House, great show, such a lovely show it was. Suzanne Shaw, Louis Spence, Cinderella, talking about it the other day online, funny enough. And I remember, doing the whole V's in the air, not the V's, I don't mean the V's in the air, I mean putting your arms aside and, giving it the old take that concert stuff. And the audience was standing, and it felt electric. And when you've got all that night after night in a family bubble with people you loved working with, and I loved everyone in that cast. It was such fun. For it to stop, yeah, hello, you're going to miss that, and you're not going to replace it. So, God, yeah, it's called the Panto Blues, but it's for a reason. January is a depressing time. It's like, God, I was doing that, and now I'm watching Eamon Holmes talk about stuff that I'm finding mildly irritating. Yeah, it's very. I mean, that's depressing in isolation. Yeah. So no, I do, mate, and I'd be surprised if other people don't.
Do you get the nerves before you go on stage?
Yes, they've lessened. I'm not going to lie. I prefer to think of it as more of a sort of surge of adrenaline, really. And if you think of it like that, you need that sort of positive, on the edge of your, and it is nerves, of course it is. But if you dress it up as, I'm going to go and get this, and you're going to go out there and attack it and really go for it, then there is, of course, there's nerves. But I've done enough live performances now which haven't worked, where I didn't know what I was doing in the early days, and I feel I'm over that now. That's what I got nervous for. I think I can do this now, and that's by no means saying I'm the best at what I do. Of course I'm not, but you need that self-belief, and you also need that drive, and you still need to get nervous that, is this going to work? Is this material that hasn't properly been audience tested going to hit? But that's what keeps you going, finding out. And you need an audience, you need a live audience to tell you,
Would you ever, you mentioned earlier on about Buttons being your favourite role.
Yeah.
Would you ever like to get into serious acting?
Oh, well.
The pathos.
The pathos, love. The pathos, dear. Yes, well, I was working with Olivia. And, I mean, I would. I mean, I do. I still harbour ambitions. I was with a good casting agent in Manchester and London. They had bases there, and I played a teacher on Emmerdale for a short time. I've done bits in Coronation Street. Nothing that would last in anybody's memory, but I did enjoy it. Certainly enjoyed it. And I went back and trained in performing arts at one stage. So I do feel I've got it in my belt, under my belt a little bit. The problem that I suffer from, and it's by no means belittling what I love, which is Panto, is that as soon as you've amassed as many Pantos as I have on my CV, you are not going to be up for a period drama. It's just not going to happen, So you either make the decision to hide it, and I don't want to hide it because I'm not ashamed of my work. I've loved my work, but there is, and I hesitate to use the word snobbery because that's perhaps not the right word. But if a casting director views your page on Spotlight and goes Sleeping Beauty, Peter Pan, Aladdin, they're going next door. It doesn't matter what you can offer, and it's just the way that industry works. And I know this through chats with my agent, with chats with casting directors. It's just how it is. You are pigeonholed, you're bracketed as light entertainment. And often, and funny enough, Bradley Walsh has disproved this theory, there is a very reluctant crossover from that side into serious acting. It has been done, but not by many people.
What would be your advice to up-and-coming comics?
Listen, watch, learn. Because it's the confidence of youth is a fantastic thing, and I'm going to sound horribly patronising here, but I've made the mistakes. You go in thinking you can do it all. I remember reading Frank Skinner's book thinking that he was off on a slightly different tangent. That he booked Edinburgh before he had an act, and he went on because in his local comedy club he could just freewheel, he could just ad lib, and something would come to him and he'd go bomb. And he went to Edinburgh and he didn't have a show, and he said, "I'll just go for it." And with that, assuredness, that cockiness, that he was, and naturally he died. Of course he died, because there was no substance to what he was doing. So yeah, look, the thing is to watch and learn. Don't mimic, don't imitate, don't steal, but find you in the character. Find you. If you're right for a performer, then you put you into Buttons, you put you into Wishy Washy, and you make it, and that's how you make it your own. So there's a few things there, but that's what I would say. And read. You can learn so much from the past without being, a pale imitation of something that's already been done. But you take the nugget, because the rules don't change. The rules of performance don't change. They're set in stone. It's up to you to make them relevant. So yeah, learn from it, watch, listen. I mean, it's hardly groundbreaking advice again, is it?
It's advice, mate.
It's advice, mate. Yeah,
it's advice.
I'm not here to be a theatre doctor, love.
No.
I don't know. No, there's other people far more qualified.
You said you watched that very first performance. You were sort of going, "Oh God, it's."
Yes. Yeah.
Do you dissect yourself when you look back on things?
Yeah,
I
do. I mean, yeah, I less so now. I'll be brutally honest, but yes, you do, because you can get transfixed on it, and you can be. It can take almost your eye off the kind of freedom of it. If you're too analytical. But of course, like I was saying earlier in the slush thing, it's about time, it's about precision. And you'll only get that from rewatching what you've done. And it's every performer, I think, really, unless they're a complete egomaniac, would struggle to watch themselves a lot, constantly. It's a bit crappily self-obsessive, isn't it? But you've still got to pick it apart a bit. But I say don't get obsessed with it. But yeah, analyse and improve. That's how things get better, isn't it?
Who were your comedy heroes growing up?
Wow. Do you know what? We were talking, funnily enough, when you first arrived, and they came up in conversation, but I've got fond memories of the Grumbleweeds, because they were in their pump in the mid 80s, I'm going to say. I was just a kid, I was barely double figures, and I remember, I think it was in Blackpool, funny enough, and I remember just seeing them all sitting on 4 stools, as they used to do, just knocking it out of the park. And I just found Graham hilarious. What we were saying, his face, man, his face was just,
he couldn't have been a doctor, could he?
Yeah. Sorry, who's flying the plane?
This little fella.
Yeah, and he comes out the door. You'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll get the ferry. No, but. Yeah, so the Weeds, only because I had the circles my parents moved in. We met them a lot, we saw them a lot. They made me howl. I had more contemporary inspirations as well, but yeah, I mean, look, I'm a big fan of look at that, I've forgotten who I'm going to talk about. But no, I mean, I'm a big fan of Frank Skinner, funny enough. He was quite influential in me. And, a lot of the American comics as well, I've got a lot of time for. When Richard Pryor was coming through and all, just seeing those different edges of comedy and just realising that there's so many elements. There's so many different perspectives to come from. But anything that can slightly berate anything as well. I'm quite an anarchic comedian. I like highlighting the nonsense in stuff, or perhaps I think Kevin always thought I was too much of a cynical comedian to be Buttons. But I like shoving for example, just pushing against the cloth and going, oh look, a wave. You know, those moments where I kind of break the fourth wall and say, look, yeah, we know it's a cloth. You know it's a cloth. Let's not pretend that this is a real seascape, everyone, because we're both kidding ourselves. So you can't do it all the time. You can't pull it all apart. But now and again, those moments of anarchic comedy, that's me, man. I really enjoy it. I can get carried away with it. And that's when directors have to be strong with me and go, no, mate, start believing what you're doing, because we can't send the whole thing up. And they're absolutely right to do so.
Have you ever been tempted to write a panto yourself?
Well, funny you should mention, Mr. Parker, because a friend of mine and myself are currently in discussions with the horrible year that we've had. Once I found out the Winter Gardens wasn't happening, we've penned, well, we haven't penned it yet, but we've penned parts of it, and we're in discussions with a small venue that if we can work the figures, we can hopefully get one in, and maybe we can move, or I can make a move towards production as much as anything else with a friend of mine, as I said. So I can't really say much more than that, because we're currently at a critical stage of negotiation.
Watch this space.
I think that's the term that people use.
Well, this leads me on to my last question. Your dream pantomime. So you can be in it.
Right.
You choose the production. You choose the theatre.
Oh.
And your cast can be alive or dead or a mixture.
Oh my
of
God! I wish
both.
you'd have sent me an email for this.
You should have listened to the podcast.
Yeah, I am a naughty boy. I am a naughty man. Yeah, you're right. Right, okay. And now then, this would have required more thought, so I'm going to give you a very surface answer. I mean, it's Cinderella for a start, because I love Buttons. I love him. I often get paid them, but I love playing the character because it's pathos. There's an acting part. There's a tenderness to him. It's just lovely, isn't it? He's just lovely. Right. Whew. Now on to the difficult part. I'm putting, for all the things I've mentioned in this podcast, I'm putting Potts in as Dame. Oh no, the sisters in Cinderella. God, I'm sorry, Eric.
Fairy godmother.
Fairy godmother. Should we go through it like that? Okay.
Well, couldn't Eric be fairy godmother?
Do you know what? It'd be a great casting. I think someone should do that. If anyone's out there, Eric Potts' future is fairies. Right, stage right, in spotlight, in a tutu. He's lost a lot of weight, Potsy, now, so he's not going to be quite visually as funny as he once was. No offence, Eric. Yeah, let's put him there, because he will nail that comedy. All right, well cast, Hayden. I didn't know we were in this together now.
Well,
who do you want me next? Who do you want next?
should we go Ugly Sisters?
Ugly Sisters, right. Okay, let me think. I mean, right, I really enjoyed working with Louis Spence, okay, because he's so charismatic. I'm having him as one of the sisters, and I'm pairing him with Les Dawson, just to see how that chemistry works. But no, look, if I'm being serious, there's been no better combination for me than Sissy and Ada, so it's Dawson and Barraclough all day long.
Could they do evil, though? Les is evil?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Sorry to throw that spanner
Well,
in.
you've done it now, haven't you?
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, no one's going to see this show, are they? Who's cast this? Well, I think he had a dark side. The dark side of Dawson, and he was such a talented performer. But look, you're asking a comic to cast this. I'm going to go heavy on comedy, and they're in, mate.
A baron.
A baron. Do you know the guy who I've worked with, who was probably the best feed that I've worked with, is David Fleischman. Hats off to Mr. Fleischman. A dynasty of a family, his son and daughter in the business. His wife is. They're doing so well. But my goodness, didn't he work his socks off to make me funny? You know, and I remember doing the who, what, where, but I've never had that delivered so precisely and so beautifully that all I had to do was effectively, it was the equivalent of someone putting a perfect cross in a box and I had a tap in from a yard. You know, it was he was such a good feed and a really lovely bloke, so true to his character, which made, again, the anarchy work. Fleischman's in as Baron, David Fleischman, and I should text you if you're listening, which you might not be.
Who'd be your cinders?
Okay, now then, I have to be careful here. As a married man, you understand,
Of course.
Hayden. I've worked with some beautiful Cinderellas over the years. Beautiful Cinderellas. Suzanne Shaw made a lovely Cinderella. We got on really well. Kim, I'm not just going to name people from hearsay, but Kim Marshall worked with at Christmas, and she was so much fun to work with. But let's think. Who am I putting in as Cinderella? I'm trying to think of someone a little bit back in the day. Why don't we go with, just because I love her to bits, Linda Lusardi? That was left field, wasn't it?
And now she's a villain.
Yeah. So this is, yeah. I mean, we're talking about in people within their eras, I suppose, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, as otherwise, poor old Les and Roy wouldn't bring much to the production, I'm afraid.
And who'd be Buttons, yourself?
Well, it's a bit grim, isn't it, casting me in this? But
Oh, of course,
but
you're
because
Panto.
I'd want to be Buttons just because I love the people I'm working around with. So
And then your venue.
the venue will be either Manchester Opera House, because I love it. I've been in a love affair with Manchester Opera House, or let's go big. Let's go the Royal Albert Hall, baby.
Yeah.
The big round thing.
The big Thanks, mate. Tam, thank you so much.
Hayden, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I really appreciate you coming round. So, and it's been a joy just to reminisce about some of the work I've done and the people I've worked with. And fair play to you, mate, for keeping this industry thriving. So, I know you don't make a penny from this, mate. So, absolutely, hats off to you, Mr. Parker. Good on you.